Well, here we are, towards the end of day on Thursday. Many of us have probably been here since Saturday, Sunday. I have two golden rules when it comes to business: no shorts and no hats. I'm breaking one of them today. My mullet is out of control. I can no longer keep this thing contained. So I was going to do shorts, but I know I would never hear the end of it. And also, I'm thinking about never hearing the end of it. The over-under, I'm a betting guy, on the number of times you hear AI this week is probably 2020, probably 2022, and the over got hit on Tuesday. But no matter what I like about this is, we call this the Thursday reality filter, the no bullshit. And, a lot of us here, most of us here, we're here to learn, to engage, and then we're all going to be going back and being asked a lot of questions. And separate the nice to have versus the reality, the pressures of a retail or competitive environment. And when it comes to the world of AI and marketing, how can it be utilized and structured for our businesses moving forward? So we've got an amazing panel, 4 powerful brands with Fetch, Victoria's Secret, Active. Wait, where did I miss one? And FedEx, of course. And by the way, 3 of us are wearing FedEx team colors today. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So why don't we start, Ruth? Introduce yourself and your organization, your role, and then how many times have you been to Cannes?
Okay, I'm Ruth Cartwright. I'm the UK Managing Director for Active International. I'm actually quite new in role, so I've been about 10 months in the business, but have always been in UK media. And Active is a business, if you don't know, it's a corporate trade, global business. It's $1.5 billion. It's an incredible business, but we work with agencies, brands, clients, and sort of a tripartite relationship. So we do a lot of funding, which we'll talk about later. How many times have I been to Cannes? I was just talking to Brad about this. I think maybe 7 or 8.
7 or 8. All right, that's the new line. Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Preis. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Victoria's Secret & Co. I joined exactly a year ago, so I'm new to Victoria's Secret & Co, relatively speaking, and I'm new to Cannes. It's my first time here. I think you probably all know who Victoria's Secret & Co is. We're basically in the business of being sexy and encouraging you to be and celebrate your sexy.
Hi, I'm Jenny Robertson with FedEx, and I have responsibility for our brand marketing and our global communications, and this is my first year here.
All right, Brad Spychalski. This is over 10 years. I haven't come every year, but I've been about 7 times. And I lead consumer and business marketing for Fetch. Fetch is a rewards app. We reward you points for all the things that you shop and buy. You can redeem those points for gift cards. I'm really excited to be back and meet with these. I didn't get the memo on the FedEx color thing. Sorry, but. Yeah.
We'll fix it in post. Don't worry about it. I mean, I think what's going to be really interesting in hearing, obviously, the role that Active Media has with their clients, and we're going to talk about that. But think about the established brands, FedEx and Victoria's Secret and Pink, and then we'll call it more of a relatively new, if you will, but compared to FedEx and Victoria's Secret with Fetch, and how it's interesting as I've been blessed enough to do brand innovator events. I don't care if you're in CPG, e-com, or automotive, we're all facing very similar challenges as we think about, what the future is to hold. So let's tackle the first paradox first, and I'm calling this like commercial reality versus creative urgency. Everyone is here been talking about AI and how to scale up like creative production instantly, efficiently. And oh, by the way, we've all got competitive pressures when it comes to closing out Q1, thinking about the balance of the year. I can tell you in my previous role at BetMGM, we reduced non-working spend 15% in the first 2 weeks, yet the plan didn't change. So we had to think about how to be more efficient. So back when we get home and we get back to our normal lives, budgets are facing these pressures, the commercial pressure, and how do we fund and justify something that's bold, is human storytelling, and has guardrails that are maybe tighter than ever before. And Ruth, I want to start with you. Leaders are spending all week thinking about how to push creative work, and then how do you think about that when you're at Active, working with clients, and you have a really unique value proposition of how, and I've worked with Active and your competitors before, how do you approach that when you're on the media side, but you know there's some of that non-marketing, pressure, and you're all trying to work together to bring a great idea to life?
Yeah, I think my observation, now more than ever this year and the past couple of years have been very tough. The market and clients and brands, if their budgets are being reduced, actually we're having more of those conversations about how can we fund and support their media and marketing differently. So in some ways, when it's a sort of tricky time economically, globally, you actually get to talking about really interesting conversations with people, because as a business, we're all about outcomes. You have to be able to offer something that is of interest to a brand and client. And that could be, as an example, paying for their media planning product, or looking at different events and travel that we can support them with. And we have 300 plus clients in the UK, globally it's more. But I think the thing that powers all of our sort of thread of corporate trade are different pillars. It's content, it's digital, it's international business. And I've been surprised and really pleased at how those elements are scaling so fast. Clients are wanting to talk to us about how they create content. That could be from creative elements and actual ads right through to long form content. And actually we're in a really nice sort of niche spot, if you like, because a lot of media owners are struggling with their content budgets. They're being cut. It isn't a given now that they have hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're in a really nice space where we're able to support clients and brands to keep doing the marketing, because actually a lot of the marketing value isn't in the marketing budget. So it's been great, good time as well.
I would imagine you're seeing that more and more to that point, especially depending on the client. You could have multiple agencies, right? On the brand, the CRM side, content, it all depends where. Are you seeing more and more of your clients coming to you, working with the media partners actively to help drive some of that solutioning?
Yeah, we are. I would say that we were definitely like an outcomes-based business. We facilitate, and really we're looking for solutions. If a brand comes to us with a problem, we're all ears, and that can be across all of the elements that you just spoke about.
And Brad, let's turn over to you. And I think about Fetch and the value proposition that you make available to millions of clients. I would imagine that you have no shortage of first-party data. And right? And how do you utilize, as you think about the power of that first-party data, the insights that you can glean? What is that conversation, from a brand marketer sitting in a boardroom with a CFO and taking that first-party data, but trying to use that to build out real-life consumer experiences that, from a challenging standpoint, they may see it as more of a cost center versus a long-term loyalty play. So how are you utilizing that data to, certainly acquisition and, consideration, but, at the bottom of the funnel with loyalty and retention?
Yeah, good question. And I think first shout out to my CFO, Gideon.
Is he here?
He's not here, but hopefully
all right.
Recording this.
We'll make sure this makes the cut.
Because I'd walk in and tell him the same thing anyway, so it's fine. But I think it's not just a CFO for Fetch, and I work on the consumer marketing side, but I also lead our business marketing side. So we work with hundreds of brands that also advertise within our platform. So I need to have both of that. And I can't just say, this is going to drive vibes or awareness, just clicks, likes, etc. Like we actually have to have true, authentic story here, and that's sort of the beauty of Fetch. I don't know if any folks here have used it, but 13 million receipts are processed each day. When you look at how much GMV we read by digital and physical receipts, is $220 billion. So not a retailer, but say we're third right behind Amazon, Walmart, and then Fetch. So when I go into the CFO, I have to be thinking about how am I driving new users? Am I retaining them? What does that long-term relationship look like? If they happen to leave, can I get them back? And I have to do that, we need to do that even with our brand partners as well. So we actually just, time to can, we launched a study with Bain, and we looked at that. We looked across CPG, retail, restaurant, and with CPG, we think we call it like a reward is a better ad, right? You can build a relationship with the reward, but they also, it can get a negative, I think, when you think of just a promo, and that's totally what we're not doing, because when you bring someone in with a promo, it's a one and done. So we think about a reward, and we look at it with CPG brands, for example. We're driving like 7 times the net return on spend, and the coolest thing is actually to come back again. So 18% more likely to come back in the next 2 quarters to buy your product again, right? Like nobody wants to. If my CFO sees that I'm, spending on one user, and then 2 months later I'm spending on that same person again, I don't have a job. So I think that's really, really important, and that's why I say rewards. There needs to be a relationship. So yeah.
I mean, we want you back next year, so no time.
Oh, thank you.
No time. We don't need multiple, acquisition plays. Jenny, let's talk about FedEx. And all of us have a FedEx story, right? You probably get those all the time, right? To me, FedEx is the ultimate engine of, global physical connection. And in a world, I just hosted a bunch of interns up at the Brand Innovators Villa, and I was like, while AI is like just so inventive and so like it's a time, it's helping me from a time efficiency standpoint, there's still moments that will never be replicated by AI. And I think about FedEx that, I could only imagine the speed at which you want to operate in implementing AI into everything that happens with a consumer. But there are points in time where there needs to be that physical touch point, that emotional, the empathy of delivery, or whatever, or send, or whatever it might be. We've all had that. So how do you, as a marketer, there's a product innovation, and then as a marketing standpoint, how do you balance some of that, like the shiny object, test and learn, but ultimately your brand is the most valuable asset within the 4 walls of FedEx?
Absolutely. So nobody ships a package or ships anything that they don't care about. If they're sending it somewhere, it matters to them somehow. And so we understand that in order to deliver on our promise, and we have what's called the Purple Promise, and if you can ask your next FedEx driver you see, what's the Purple Promise, and he or she should be able to tell you, it is, I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. And it's very simple, but everyone knows it, and it's been there since the company was founded. And we know, though, that not only applies to our people, it applies to the technology as well. And how are we using our technology to make every experience outstanding for our customers and also for our team members? And we know that if that package that you ship that you care about, you want that experience to be good, and our drivers and our couriers are the face of the company. They are our brand. And so we have to use the technology to help them deliver that outstanding experience. In fact, our founder said back in the 70s that the information about the package is as important as the package itself. So he understood there has to be this balance of technology and human touch in order to deliver what you are ultimately promising to your customers.
Well, I will tell you, the FedEx guy comes to my house about 3 times a day, according to my dog, and I'm going to ask for the purple. How many people have asked for the purple promises? All right, that's a little bit of an awareness play. We're gonna
right. Do it next time.
I'm sure Active Media will take your media dollars and we'll put it all somewhere. I'm going to ask for the purple, the promises. Elizabeth, Victoria's Secret in pink. And as I think about the changing retail environment, you have to think about retail, e-com. One of the things is I got to know you last week, and I read up. You're a major advocate for beta mode and testing, and learn optimizing on the fly. As you think about AI technology, consumer experience, acquisition, purchase and loyalty, how do you quickly filter out some of the distractions and invest in tech that enhances the customer experience, whether it's purely on e-com or on the retail side?
Yeah, at Victoria's Secret, we're really very focused on the customer experience, and we also believe that technology should be in service of that experience, not a replacement of the service. I think so often, especially in everyone has different expertise in the organization. I might speak to some of my partners, and they might have a really exciting tech idea. And a tech idea can be fantastic if it actually enhances the customer experience, whether that be speedier, better, more accurate, whatever that might be. I'll give you a real life example. Last fall, we were getting ready for the holiday season, and my tech partner had this great idea to enhance the fitting room technology so I could be in the fitting room and I could check out other bras and I could have the bras delivered to me. And I'm thinking to myself, we are facing the most busy time of the year. where service in the fitting room is going to be pretty cramped, where there are going to be more customers in the store than ever, and something that had to be developed in time for holiday season was just not going to be feasible. However, in speaking to my head of stores, she said, you know what could be really good though? I would love to have more mobile POS stations. That would be where I would rather spend my mobile or my tech initiatives would be on the mobile POS. So give me more mobile POS in these 100 stores. That will improve the experience in a real way. So I think it's, technology should always be through, is it going to enhance the experience? Because if it's not going to enhance the experience, then it needs to be put on the back burner. And then after you've assessed that yes, it will, then how many people will it impact? And for us, it was like there are many people in a line during the holiday season. If I could speed up that line for half of them, so instead of 1 hour, it's a half an hour. Instead of a half an hour, it's 15 minutes. That's real value to the customer.
And I think and we were talking about some of the Heritage brand. You've been there
1 year.
1 year, and it's got to be, it's an honor always, but to take the keys of an iconic brand and continue to revolutionize. And the guy I was speaking to the students today, I remember back in the 90s and sitting with car dealers and talking about how the internet may change consumer shopping habits. Like, yeah, I see what might happen with travel, books, but nobody will ever buy a car online. Seems silly now to hear it. In the 2011-12, the iPhone comes out, 1% of e-commerce was done mobile. 4 or 5 years later, it flips. We're right there again today. It's the fastest, the business is moving the fastest we've ever seen it. And this is the ultimate test of modern leadership. And so we're going to talk about how our marketers, our agency partners, how do we maintain an iconic master brand identity while entirely handing the keys over to like a changing culture, not only demographically, but socially and culturally, where the consumers change and driving so much of how a brand may act or more importantly react. So Jenny, I'm gonna come back to you and talk about FedEx, right? FedEx has an unbelievable global heritage, and with a platform like the new Power Move, you're always modernizing how the brand communities and the digital agility towards a new generation of entrepreneurs. How do you take that legacy corporate reputation and feel fast, modern, and deeply connected to today's cultural speed?
Yeah, so we actually started the development of that campaign that's out right now, the new Power Move. The line of many know our legacy, few know our potential, and that is because we were a challenger brand for the longest time. We were a startup. UPS had been around for a lot longer. A lot of other delivery companies were out there, and FedEx kind of created this industry of overnight shipping, and that hadn't been heard of at the time. But now, that was in the 70s. Now it's almost you take it for granted that you can get something overnight delivered to you. And so we have to modernize the brand while still staying true, though, to what got us here, and that idea of speed, reliability, that the culture of our people makes us stand out. And so we're not taking those away, but we're saying, what is that new power move? And so the campaign, BBDO here, they helped us put it together, and the idea is we are making fun of old corporate power moves, whether it's showing the big shiny watch and flashing it in the eyes, or the hard stare at somebody that makes them uncomfortable. And we're saying those are all the old power moves. FedEx is the new power move, and that's introducing all of the new solutions and all of the new ways that FedEx can help your business beyond the way you might have thought about FedEx in the past. And so it's been just kind of a fun way to tell the same story we've been telling. We're still doing things different than everybody else. We're still moving ahead, but we're telling it in a more modern way, in a way that evokes emotion, that makes people laugh, that makes people recognize themselves. And I think people are now, since they've seen our spots, they'll catch themselves saying, oh, that was a power move, I'm sorry, and they'll apologize. So I feel like we're also trying to help corporate culture everywhere by calling it out. But it's a way to ring true about what our brand stands for, while also helping move it forward and demonstrate how we're moving forward.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, coming off the heels of again FedEx and with Victoria's Secret and Pink, long-stand brand. Obviously, it continues, and you're leading that, the continued brand turnaround, and you're shifting the entire master brand towards modern inclusivity, body positivity, and female allyship. And then we've seen that come through life through platforms, the marketing, and the brand. How do you honor the consumer nostalgia for the heritage while modernizing what today's consumer really wants? And it's always got to be a tricky balance, much as Elizabeth was talking about with FedEx.
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, it is an incredible opportunity to work for brands that have such a heritage. It's also an incredible responsibility to work for brands with incredible heritage. Because you're right, you want to honor what's come before you, but you need to also make it relevant and resonant for the next group of customers. So for us, it really started with, first and foremost, aligning as a team, what does our brand stand for? And I think that when you go straight down to the core of what your brand means and what you want your brand to say to the audience, to your customers, to your community, for us it was, we want to unapologetically and very, very boldly and very, very proudly stand for sexy. It's as simple as that. And I think when we were waffling as a company, it was awesome we waffled on that. Now what's different, of course, is that we are not prescribing or we are not telling you what sexy is going to be. What we want to do instead is we want to be the place for you to find and discover what you think is sexy for you. And that is a very big difference. So it was that we don't want to shift from what we stand for, but we do want to shift for how you experience that as a consumer. And the irony of that is once you make it personal, then all of a sudden you can invite a much broader community to your brand. And they can find things in you that may not be what you would have projected, but for them, it's them, it's themselves, it's resonating to them. A great example of sort of inviting the community into our brand more holistically is, as we mentioned last fall, we had a fashion show, and that was, big. We were very happy with it. We were very happy with the success of it. And in thinking about what that could look like this year, date TBD, not yet discussed, not yet announced. What it could look like this year was, what if we brought our community in even further? And so this year we launched The Angels Among Us. And that whole concept was inviting people to effectively try out to be an angel. And we had over 100,000 people be part of our application process. We had 900 people walk for us in Miami, in LA, in Houston, in Chicago. And we asked them we didn't just watch the walk. We also asked about them. We were as interested in them as they were interested in us, beyond just what they looked like. And I think that's a real way of inviting consumers to participate in your brand in a way that is personal for them and authentic to them.
Yeah, listen, again, authentic, probably the third most used word this week, but it's right. As you think about consumers in community, inviting them into your brand, and that's where you develop, top of the funnel, but certainly loyalty and affinity. Brad, I'm an old school guy, right? And I would imagine you work with brands. How do you, as you think about, bridging that gap between, legacy identity and modern culture, working with brands that are used to, all right, how do I drive loyalty? Well, we've always done whatever. Coupon clipping, I love my CVS coupons, I don't want them on my phone. Not many years ago, my wife and I would sit there on a Sunday and, clip our coupons. But how do you build and work with brands to build towards that genuine emotional equity, and by embedding rewards into real-time cultural moments?
Elizabeth, I love the relationship and the loyalty you just talked about. You're building that with kind of your trusted consumers and giving them that chance to, that's what it's about. Loyalty isn't, it's not a program. That's just the stage for it. And I think it has to be a reciprocal relationship between the two. And consumers have so much power these days, if you think about it, but they don't really get anything back. Just like any relationship or negotiation, there's a give and a get. But there's a lot of giving. They're giving up their name, their IP, their data, they're giving up their dollar. But they also have a lot of power of what brands that they choose. Do they come back? Where they spend their time? All of these types of things, right? So we look at it, we actually think, we call it sort of a broken value exchange, where consumer has so much power, and yet we're not helping fulfill that. And I can't help but even just reflect all of us, we're here in Cannes, and all the creativity and the imagination, but also like some of the opulence and all of the things we have, and which is incredible. But also, some of us are going home tonight, some of us maybe tomorrow, some of us on Saturday. But when we go back home, consumers, especially in the States where I'm from, we're all living a very different life right now. We're making tough decisions. Is it gonna get gas? Is it childcare? Is it rent? Groceries, etc. These are like real things, and they should be able to get something for those decisions. And I think that's the big piece that we're trying to do, is bring in an additional reward that's not forcing you to change your behaviors. You're already going to do it, but is it, this kind of macaroni and cheese versus this other one? If that one gives you 1,000 points, well, there's a little treat in that. And actually, Elizabeth, we were talking about this the other day, is the idea of a little treat, I think, is really interesting right now. In our data, I actually looked at it in kind of preparation for this, but during all of this, actually, like televisions, big, huge ticket purchases are actually kind of trending down based on our recent data. The thing that we have seen, and I've proved it many times this week, is beverages like Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts. We look at Celsius, Pepsi, some of these different brands. There are these little treat yourself little moments. And we were joking, and intimates, right? So treat yourself, feel good, and we should be able to do that. But also, it has to be a reciprocal relationship, right? It has to be a relationship, not just a one-sided street.
So, Ruth, we have brand marketers here, and brands want to lead with purpose, authenticity, and so there's that end of the equation of like, all right, how do we bring a brand idea, a promise, whatever it might be, but those have to survive a media buy. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, MMM, optimization, yep, we'll look at it a quarterly basis, monthly. Now, brands like at BetMGM, we were doing weekly optimizations. Some you can, some you can't. From a media partner standpoint, is whether Victoria's Secret, FedEx, and Fetch, when a brand wants to bring something to life, lead with purpose. How do you work? How are you working with clients to ensure we're not spending more time with did the ads run and over engineering in a programmatic automated world? We want to make sure that it's not lost in translation. How do you approach that?
So it's really interesting to hear everyone on the panel, because everyone talks so passionately about their brands, and I would say that my role and Active's role within that sort of network is really around, we're the custodian of your media plans, and we take that really importantly. There's a lot of trust in that. We would never sort of interfere or change a plan. It comes to us, we're agnostic, so there is no sort of interference, if you like, around what it is you want to do, the messaging, where you want to be placed. But I do feel as though so much has changed, and everything is, sort of needed immediately or yesterday. And we work really hard with our teams to make sure that we are delivering, we're communicating, we're connecting. And I think that's what we bring to the process. I don't want Active to sit and have a conversation with a brand and we're adding complexity into something that is already very complex. So we like to say that we're adding value all the way through that process, that you can really see the returns. And actually probably at the core of our conversations and partnerships with brands and agencies is that outcome piece, because it has to be equitable, otherwise they're not coming back again. So it feels as though there's definitely a sort of outcome view of how do we make this work, how do we amplify what that message is, and make sure the client has everything that they need, but they're doing it across media where we can deliver a really tangible discount. There's a cost element that is clearly important to that.
And from your standpoint, how much more adamant have you had your clients we need to from a brand media standpoint, longer ship in the ocean? How much more pressure are you feeling from a brand media standpoint to optimize in-flight versus performance and in-market, where it's you can literally be doing it daily or weekly?
Yeah, I mean we've got it's definitely one of the pillars that we're scaling digital, so we now have our own bid board team in the office. And I think actually it's around talent and expertise, so when we're talking to clients that they can absolutely trust in what someone is recommending. it isn't a case of wanting to dial up performance versus something else. It really is around the entire sort of holistic plan and going, right, how do we do this and how do we do it better? I'd say some of the conversations that we're having at the moment with brands have been, it's really interesting. If they're having marketing budgets cut, and we're then in a space where we can say, right, you wanted to do X, we will fund that, and then we will make sure that we can leverage the conversation around product or anything else. Those conversations are becoming more innovative and more frequent because we all know that there are budgets that are being cut. So we sit in a nice position where we can help facilitate and deliver for people when the budgets have been tighter.
So no one's increasing their budgets 50%? Anyone?
I'm seeing that.
Budget's up 50%? No? You never want to say that in this kind of room either, right? It's always being challenged. All right, we're moving towards the back half of this. 7 times? 6, 7, 1, 1, right? And 6 and no, we're not. And I was again telling the students today, 3 years ago I was not here, but going to Brain Innovators events. 3 years ago it was, all right, what is this AI and how could it maybe come into my world, right? And now the conversation's like speed, efficiency, operationalize. I heard a very interesting stat yesterday. I was at a Google CMO summit. It's like 98% of CMOs, right, support advocates for AI. 50% use it on a regular basis. 30% feel like they've got good operational systems in place. And there are only 30% of team members that are super supportive and so we have to lead from the top. But all week, AI. We've heard a lot of technology, different things. And Brad, I'm gonna start with you. What is something that you've heard that is a buy and that you're going back and you're talking to the team, your CFO, what have you, like, we need to implement this into our business team playbook today? And what's something that's just like, it's a sell, meaning I don't buy it might be bullshit, or I'll worry about that next year because I got other priorities?
All right, for buy, I'm not gonna actually invest, I think, in air conditioning, and then
good call.
And then, but I actually think there's a thing too, and I was playing into it before. But I think with AI, there's also is there an actual intelligence? What do we know about people? You can feed AI so much information, it spits stuff back to you, and it gives us all the same responses basically. But what about true human behavior? And I think that's Ruth, where you're getting into.
Absolutely.
Is how do they shop, the decisions they make. So anyway, I think that's it. Sell, I think, is AI for AI's sake. I think there's ways. One thing, I am a copywriter by trade, and I think one thing we're just working on sort of a brand positioning and sort of a manifesto, and there's just little things that AI just can't get. I think here's a line, for example, is sometimes life gets lifey. Now, you get the word lifey because it's it relates to you, and even that pause on my timing of sometimes life gets, right? AI can't do it. They're terrible with comedy. They're not very good with the delivery and things. So I think the human-powered element has to be the soul of it still. It has to help drive it. Otherwise, I don't know, the robots have taken over.
Jenny, buying and selling.
Similar to that, I will say, I attended a session with an astronaut, and it was Reed Wiseman, who just went around the moon on Artemis, and he talked about how while he was there, they read poetry because they needed a way to best describe what they were seeing and experiencing. And I was thinking about that later, and I was like, this is the ultimate science, AI-driven, tech-driven mission you can think of. I mean, they're going to the moon and back. It doesn't get more scientific than that. But they're using poetry to talk about it, to describe it. And so I'm taking back that concept that art matters, that poetry matters, that we can't lose our sight of that amid all the talk about AI. And then when I'm selling, and it may just be because I'm grumpy and hot, but I am so tired of the word authentic. Everybody, I'm like, who doesn't want to be authentic? And who is not? I mean, to me, I'm tired. Everyone keeps saying, it just seems like a throwaway line. As long as we're authentic, we're fine. I'm like, yeah. But what does that mean? So I'm selling that.
I think you get a lot of hands in the air there. Elizabeth, buying and selling.
So buying, really about the community. I know it's another bingo term for Can, but that is definitely high on the list. We all have it. How are we really tapping into it more so that we're listening to it more, we're learning from it more, and then from that we're creating and we're celebrating it more. So that's the one. And then I would agree with Brad. Like, where is AI just like a cool term, and where is it really helping your business? And sometimes sometimes these little incremental things that AI can help you with are keeping you from actually making monumental shifts with your business. And in the last year, we would not have seen the results we've seen without some monumental changes to our business. And for that, it was focusing a lot more on focusing on the new customer, getting the new customer in. That is what's helped turn around our business, and that is what we're super focused on.
Ruth, bring us home.
So, I mean, everything that everyone said is being spot on. I would definitely say around community, and for me, that's then how I take that back into the office. When everyone goes back, you know, we've had such a fantastic time here, but what does it actually mean for the day-to-day? What am I going to be bringing in? Where's the tech? And you talk about a team, you know, 30% owners are engaging. It's trying to bring some purpose and interest into some of that. What I would sell is, I think we talk a lot about efficiencies, and for me that doesn't equate to trust. So we've got to be really careful. I suppose it's that human thread, right? There's definitely an element of we can go at it and make sure that the processes are smoother, faster, you know, brilliant. But if there's no trust in that process and nothing is open to it, then it falls over.
I agree. And listen, I've been doing this a long time, and I believe perfect marketing is the right blend of art, science, and courage. And Ruth and Elizabeth and Jenny and Brad absolutely embody that in their leadership and what they're doing through the brands. So thank you so much for being here. Let's go get some fans and fucking water, and we're going to turn it over to the next thing. Thank you.